Good afternoon, friends. I'm Jim Freeman. We're here together with a group of people that meet frequently to discuss issues related to what's called threefolding. And we have a guest with us today, uh, Mr. Grant Davis, who is a retired computer scientist and a current board member of the Rudolf Steiner College in Canada. And last summer in 2024, I believe it was July. We had an online meeting with a gentleman by the name of Helmi Abelesh, who is the current director, I suppose, of the Sekem community in Egypt. We'll learn more about that. But Sekem is an exciting experiment in what they call holistic sustainable development, which started in 1977 and has been active and growing ever since then. Uh, Helmi was very gracious to join us. He's a very busy guy and runs a large organization, but he joined us for about a 90-minute conversation. Uh, Grant and others were present. Grant is an active consultant and travels actually throughout the world to help nonprofit groups and other groups, specifically with development, so raising funds for various activities. He can explain more about that. But he was able, because of his connection with the community in Turkey, to travel not too long ago from Turkey to Egypt and meet with some people at Sekem. So we're here today to hear about that and hear about his impressions and what we can learn from Grant. So Grant, do you want to briefly introduce yourself and take it from there?
Sure, I'll introduce myself. Thanks, Jim, by apologizing for not having a moving image. My camera is broken, but that shouldn't affect anything else besides the fact that my face is frozen on your screen. Uh, I think I'll go straight into the share so that we can work with much nicer images than this one. And one of you on the line can tell me when you see the second screen or this intro
I see
slide.
it, Grant.
Excellent. Okay. Actually, my situation, Jim described accurately, except for one thing. I'm in Turkey often because I'm a dual citizen, and so it's really simple for me to go to my other home. So when I had the opportunity to listen to Helmi, it awakened an interest that many anthroposophists have in this amazing uh, spiritual oasis in the desert, Sekem. And I thought, this is a good kick in the pants. I'm going to hop over from Istanbul to Cairo. It's a very quick flight. And thanks to the connection that we made with Helmi Abelish, the CEO of Sekem, I was able to make arrangements quite easily. So I'll give you a slideshow that are photos. I didn't really intend to make this a presentation when I was there, although I offered to answer questions, but luckily my traveling companion took enough photos that I was able to pull things together. And so you can watch some of these slides. I welcome my style of presentation is interrupt me anytime. I welcome interruptions. So if you have questions, you don't need to raise your hand. Just try to find a moment when I'm not talking. Or if you wish, raise your hand, but I can be interrupted at any moment. So Sekem in just about, what is it, 70 kilometers? I'm not sure if that number is accurate. Northeast of Cairo in the desert is a farm, and much more than a farm now. And the name Sekem encompasses much more than just the farm, other locations and other activities. So I will try to cover them in a bit of an overview fashion, and we can dive into any of the details that I may or may not know. I didn't have the opportunity to meet privately with the CEO, although we had a dinner together. It was a group dinner. So there are some questions that some of this group forwarded to me that I wasn't able to resolve. I may have come up with enough by osmosis that I can give you an answer now, but there were some direct questions that I wasn't able to pose. So I'll start with this overview, and at the end of these slides, there is an organizational chart. The only slide that I didn't produce, I copied it from their website, and that organizational chart will certainly be a place at which, if there haven't been questions up to that point, we can dive into how Sekem is approaching threefolding. The threefolding aspect is what the group was curious about, and I am as well. And it is incorporated in many aspects of Sekem, I believe it's fair to say. So I'll start with this slide. So on the way to Sekem, it was pitch black. I'm not sure when I took this photo, and perhaps my companion took it, but this is a view of the fruit orchard. So we'll see many trees here, but this is just one view of Sekem. There are many other components. So let's flip to a following slide. Sure. Technology. I'm a retired computer scientist, so does it work? Yeah. Let's see. One more try. Oh, yes. Okay, I can do it that way. It's a little clumsier, but I might go too far sometime. Here's the second slide. And this is the desert vegetation that you would expect to see. Probably not quite this abundantly, but mostly it's just sand. If you go outside Sekem, if you go in some direction, you see other farms. But if you go in the desert direction, you just see sand. You don't see anything like this kind of abundance of vegetation. So even this desert vegetation was planted by Helmy's father initially in the late 70s. And he gradually moved from a single building and a few plants to a large flourishing farm of multi-factors. So what you see in most of the public areas of Sekem is abundant vegetation, including many bougainvilleas lining the walkways between the agricultural plots. It's just overwhelmingly beautiful with all of these. This is a couple of colors. I think there's 3 or 4 bougainvillea colors, a couple I've never seen before. So that was growing in what was sand. Everything was sand. This is still lining. Lots of, whoops, it is going to move too fast for me. Now we see, in a moment, you'll see birds landing, looking for food. It's an oasis. There's lots of wildlife as well as livestock, and as well as vegetation of many types. So let's see if I can move forward. This is a close-up on one of the agricultural plots. I'm not certain what this plant is, but it's the soil clearly is so well amended that a crop will just fill the plot without any concern about weeds. They grow what they intend to now. So the amendments of the soil, biodynamic focused amendments have been very successful. And I'll show that aspect of the farm in a moment. Oh, it's going to jump around. These are lining the main walkways between the buildings and off in to the edges of the plot of the entire farm. These were planted in the late 70s, and they're actually non-natives. They're Australian desert trees. I forget the type, but they are enormous and thriving.
Eucalyptus.
Ah, I wondered if it was eucalyptus. Very good. I didn't want to say that because I wasn't sure. Thanks, Christopher. Yes, indeed, I remember that. So the eucalyptus have are thriving. Um, the farm is not intending to plant more non-natives, but this got started giving some shade to the plots and giving a lot of vitality to the farm. Now they're, uh, I don't know, at least 100 feet tall. They're very tall. All right, let's see. And so Sekem has continued to upgrade their facilities. They now have a guest house, which is where we stayed, and a couple of I think these folks were Austrians. There were quite a few people staying in the guest house, coming in for tours, using it as a base for tours of Egypt. Lots of um, economic activity based on tourism. So Sekem is now well positioned. The guest house is fairly new. I believe it may only be 5 years old or so. And it's lovely. It's a couple of floors and has a dining room, which is supplied entirely by Second Produce, as far as I know. It's all organic. A vegan like me was easily able to find lots to eat. And during the 3 or 4 days that I was there, uh, Helmi, the CEO who lives um, on the farm, comes and joins us for dinner and speaks. In this case, the Austrians won, and he spoke for about an hour in German. So I suffered a little bit from that lack, but I did have a bit of time to talk to him in English. Um, and Egyptian, of course. So if you go to their website, you can click and switch the entire website from English to German to Arabic. Uh, so they're extremely multicultural there. This is a close-up of the circle. The circle is an aspect of the staff interaction with the farm. Once a week, they have a gathering. All of the staff, all of the personnel, uh, visitors are welcome as well. Form a single circle, so it's quite big, and some uh, observances are made, and perhaps something inspirational is said. Unfortunately, it didn't happen during my stay, so I can't give you a very accurate description of the content of the meeting, but the entire all the people on that farm gather. So there will be several hundred people
Grant,
in the circle. Yep,
Grant,
go
I have
ahead.
a question. I thought the circles were every day, but I think you're indicating no because it sounds like you were there for a few days. So they're
Yes,
not
quite right, Linda. I thought they were every day too, and I was looking forward to it. And they aren't, they at that point at least, they weren't every day.
okay.
So
The other question I had is this is a very interesting thing with Ibrahim's, the father's name on it. Is this a tomb? And I'm wondering what if you might know the significance of the curvature. It kind of looks like a little bit like a sine wave with another an inverted sine wave underneath.
yeah, we can't see past the bougainvillea to see the middle, whether it is a sine wave or a couple of curves. No, I don't know the significance. I don't believe is buried here.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but you'll see his name, the founder, Ibrahim Ibalish, is the father of Helmi. You'll see his name on several buildings. So he's very fondly remembered with signage, we could say. Uh, so there are a number of buildings with his name or named after him. And this uh, front for the circle area is one of those. But sorry, Linda, I can't tell you for sure
It's okay. I just
if he
realized that the
was.
left-hand side must be Arabic and the right-hand side is English. Are those the two dominant? I mean, do you see a lot of English on site?
Yes, the Egyptian national languages are Arabic and English. So many people speak English. Not everyone. Arabic is very dominant over English, but many people do speak English.
Thank you.
So as I travel through even downtown Cairo, I see enough English to be able to navigate. So yeah, it's a bilingual country.
Thank
So
you.
it just I believe that Arabic is circle. It's the same thing as the English.
Great.
And the buildings behind are, I believe, both of those processing buildings that I'll talk to you about a bit later. We can see them from this perspective. So there are some large buildings dedicated to processing, or well, I'll get to that shortly. All right. There's another building with the founder's name on it. I'm not sure what the Arabic is in this case. Ibrahim, not sure. This was one of the earliest buildings. It's now used for offices, and it's actually held in a bit of memory of Abraham, the founder. Some of the rooms still have his material. It's like a little museum to him. It was interesting to see that. All right, we're off into the grounds of the agricultural area. At first, I was going to tell you these are beehives, and then I realized I was quite wrong. These are not beehives. They're very large, and they would have been the most unusual beehives I've seen. What they are is pigeon huts. They're homes for pigeons. And so the livestock of this farm is fourfold. There are beehives, lots of them. There are pigeon huts, and there are cattle and sheep. So why do they have pigeon huts? It was a bit of a historical situation. It's an Egyptian thing. You raise pigeons for their eggs, for their meat. Well, in this case, all they're really using now is they sell the pigeons for income when they breed them, and they also use the manure as part of their compost mix. They It's declining. It's not an important part, but it's an unusual image. So I wanted to show people that image. And there are several places where these pigeon homes still are established. Perhaps if someone came on who was a real pigeon fancier, it would increase in production value. All right, animal husbandry. And as you see, all the signs are bilingual. The animal husbandry area starts with the cows, the cattle. These cows are used for milk, some of them. Whoops, sorry about that. And, oh man, my mouse is not going to cooperate here. There we go. These cows are used some of them are used for milk production, and some of them are used for meat production, but by far the main purpose of these cows is manure production. So this is a biodynamic farm through and through. And so these are manure producers. And by the way, milk and meat. What can we see here? Well, just an area. All of the livestock are held in open areas with some light fencing, as you can see there. The climate is typically very benign. If it gets too hot or too cold, then they may move to this area. And this is actually, at the time I went in the winter, was being used for calving and young calves that was protecting them from the sun. What's interesting in this picture is the large hay wall. It's a wall of many layers of hay bales, and that's used to protect them from the wind and the sun. And then in the non-productive time, mostly these cattle are fed from produce on the farm. but in the non-productive time, they have a huge store of food in this wall as well. Two walls, actually. So that's an interesting use of agricultural material. It makes an important wall for them during all of the year. I guess there's so much here that the wall would never completely disappear. So that manure leads us to this biodynamic prep house. So this is a preparation house for biodynamic preps. This dome was built to have some kind of relationship to the cosmic forces so that preps could be stored inside as needed. There are many, many of these wooden boxes inside, and preps are also stored or produced outside, all of the ones that need to be buried. Each of these wooden mats is covering a prep site, and you can see the lead BD manager showing us investigating some of the prep that's being produced in this rectangle. So this is a German woman that came decades ago to visit and stayed, and now has for a long time been the leader of the BD aspect of this farm. So an enormously valuable resource having this woman still available to manage all of the BD prep, to manage the compost. There are massive rows of compost. I don't think I have a picture of them, unfortunately, but being quite interested in BD myself, I spent a bit of time looking at the rows and rows of compost. They have big agricultural machines to move and pile and turn these enormous rows of compost. So it's a very serious producer of critical material for a farm made of sand. So that's why it's not made of sand now. They've been amending the soil for decades and quite successfully. All right, I'm moving on fairly quickly because I don't have too many slides. The Lotus is the name of a company, the Lotus Herbs. That's a major product that the company, the Sekem company, Lotus, produces. And so here's a sign indicating that we're approaching that building. And inside the building, well, I'll try to stabilize all this. Okay, you should see the factory floor in a moment. And the factory floor is covered with, is not covered, is occupied with a large number of big bags. And each of these bags are either raw agricultural material or processed agricultural material. Lotus is a factory company that processes the raw material and sends it on, in some cases, straight out to the wider world as produce that can be sold, part of their economy, but in most cases brings the raw material in, processes it to the point at which the other companies can use it. The other Sekem companies, one is called ISIS, and that's an organic food company. And they may produce fresh food, but they also produce herbs and spices and oils and teas, all of which are packaged in final marketable form and sold worldwide. So that's a very important aspect of Sekem, is this ISIS organic processing, organic food, I guess I should. There's a bit of an overlap among the companies, but I try to highlight what each of them are focusing on. The Sekem Health is another company with its own building, and it produces healthcare products like medicinal herbs and medicinal teas and some other medicinal material, but not the really high level pharmaceuticals, which is a third company, Atos. So Atos also has its own building and it produces natural medicines from phytopharmaceuticals. So they are natural medicines directed to particular diseases. There are Atos products for, of course, we're familiar with the cancer products. There are Atos products for hematology problems, etc. And most of these will have a strong connection to anthroposophical medicine. It's not explicit in Sekem that this is an anthroposophical organization, but it is very closely allied. And I believe that the intention of Sekem is to continue its closer and closer alliance with anthroposophical expertise. So this is not Weleda or any of the remedies that we see in the anthroposophical doctor's office, although they certainly, some of these could be quite suitable, and there may be some anthroposophical doctors who are actually using Sekem pharmaceuticals as well. So interesting. All of this is, of course, organic and not allopathic medicine. So none of it is being supported by the big pharma that we see in the West. It's much more of a natural medicine, or even in some cases, Egyptian folk medicine being produced. And then quite different than this, but still using the material that Sekem creates or sources. I'll talk about that later in a moment. The fourth company, Nature Tex, makes textiles, makes clothing and toys and raw textile for sale. And they use either their own material, their cotton, or their flax, I guess it is. Or all of these companies are working through Lotus that processes the raw material in this picture. All of these companies are also using materials sourced from organic farmers in Egypt. So Sekem is now becoming a major, I guess the major perhaps, buyer of organic produce. And they're moving farmers into the organic and quite explicitly into the biodynamic realm and supporting those farmers, giving them a market, allowing what we could say pre-purchase finance agreements, pre-production finance agreements, so the farmer has a secure customer for their organic and biodynamic produce. So Sekem is a major player in bringing BD into all of Egypt now. Here's another picture of a processing facility. This one is quite dim. It's hard to see, not because we had a dirt, well, I guess it is because we had a dirty window, but we could actually see the dust flying. There's so much grinding and sifting and sorting of the end product that this is a dusty area. So it's high production. We're not just looking at chopping things up and putting them in a box like you would with tea, but there is a lot of equipment used, and there are areas that we couldn't see. I'm not sure why, but we weren't allowed to go into, perhaps too dangerous, perhaps commercially sensitive. So it's a high production area now, much more than a farm. So that's it for the agriculture side for the moment. On that location, oh, any questions about agriculture since I'm about to switch?
Yeah, I did have
Oh,
a question, maybe others do. On the tour that you were given or that you were on here, is this more as like a self-directed tour, or did you have a tour guide? How did that work?
and we had tour guides. We were free to roam anywhere that didn't look like they didn't want us in the door. So we could continually roam around the farm in every direction to the end. Some of the buildings we shouldn't go casually into. And some of the buildings were actually residential. So it's a little bit of attention to where you're walking. But every day there was a tour available. At one point, it looked like just the two of us, and they would have a tour for us. But we shifted our timing, and we were able to go with a group of 4 or 5 Austrians who had arrived. So we had a slightly larger group, and it made the tour guides' time worthwhile. These tour guides were not dedicated to that purpose. They were staff that gave up their time to take tours around. Uh,
Wow,
Happily so, apparently, because I think there were tours every day. So somehow that's all being coordinated as well.
thank you. Yeah.
For instance,
Grant, excuse me,
yep, go ahead.
uh, I see on the map when I look on Google Maps that there are various uh, branches of Sekem in and around Cairo and throughout northern Egypt. Uh, and you mentioned that they have relationships with farmers who they support and buy raw product from and then process it. Can you give us an idea of the scope of their operations, and were you able to visit any of those other sites?
There was a site that I really wanted to visit. It was a 6 hour drive away from Sekem, perhaps a bit more than 6 hours, across the desert, continuously for 6 hours until we get to an oasis called Wahat. And at Wahat, they have another farm that they've established a number of years ago. And so that's truly a farm in the desert. There is a small town around Wahat, and they're doing what they did outside of Cairo now, way outside of Cairo. But my companion and I decided we couldn't handle 2 6 hour drives in our schedule, so I didn't get to see that. Uh, the uh, the facilities that they trade with or buy from are usually not owned by them. These are independent farms, so although they're Sekem suppliers, they wouldn't be named Sekem. Uh, in a moment, I'll show you a major institution that's outside of Sekem, the Sekem University. And so you would see that on the Google map. But the other ones you're seeing may, if they're clustered enough, they may all be on this very large farm. There are all of these 5 processing factories are on the farm, and there's a medical center, and as I'm about to describe, a school. There are quite a number of institutions on this large plot of land. Um, but if you're seeing things well beyond that, then it's something I'm not familiar with yet, Jim.
Thank you.
The Sekem School was particularly interesting to me, being as I am the treasurer of the Canadian Teachers Training College for Waldorf. I wanted to see how Waldorf, this Sekem School, would be. And I discovered that there's a lot more to the school than primary school. Uh, Unfortunately, it was school break, and so nobody was there, almost nobody.
Mm.
So we got to speak to a couple of staff who were working, and I had some lovely experiences I'll share with you, but I didn't see any classes in session. So I can only give you the outline here as I know it, and I sort of confirmed what I vaguely remembered by going to the second website. And so on the Sekem website, this Sekem school is described in these groups. There is a nursery and kindergarten. And the nursery now is continuing to expand its coverage, is going right back to very early childhood, taking care of babies if they're needed. This whole concept of a school did, of course, start as a school for the workers on the farm, but it has expanded a lot beyond that so that it's a school that serves the community, the nearby town, and there are apparently people throughout Egypt who find this school attractive enough to send their children. And it's perhaps to some small extent an international school. There are people, there are children apparently from beyond Egypt. So it's quite an undertaking, a social undertaking to have a school that continues to expand in these directions. The primary, preparatory, and secondary school would follow the pattern that Waldorf has been established under, but nowhere is the name Waldorf used. And I asked a few people and they confirmed this school follows the Egyptian curriculum. So they're quite a politically correct school. They can fit in the society without raising any hackles. However, throughout the school, I see the Waldorf influences quite substantially. For instance, the one encounter that sticks in my mind most strongly is when we were traveling through this largely empty school, we got to the woodworking room, and there the handwork teacher was there, a hardy Egyptian man whose English was not quite as good as some others, but he was very pleased to see us and talk to us. And he talked for a good half an hour talking about how the children bring their different why is this name going to suddenly temperaments. The children bring their different temperaments to the class, and how his purpose is to bring the will out in the children, and how he does it with children of different temperaments. This was a very Waldorf, a deep Waldorf educated man who didn't strike on first glance as an educated man, but he could speak the Waldorf principles, the anthroposophical child development principles extremely well. And all of that was hidden from the public, who would say, is this a German Christian school? What's it doing here? No, not at all. There's no indication that this is a Waldorf-inspired school, except to those of us that can see it. But I'm sure it's appreciated by the children and the parents who bring their children to the school. I think it's doing well in terms of numbers. It has, I keep hitting my mouse and off it goes. It has a strong connection to the community, and it has tuition support. In addition to the mainstream of education, there is a separate vocational education in which people can be trained. I believe it's a 3-year program, so it's quite substantial, but they can be trained for productive trades and then earn their livelihood on the farm or in the wider community, the much wider community. So they're developing. I didn't get to see that area, and there was nobody there for me to interview, but it's a significant undertaking. One thing I discovered on the website is something I didn't know when I was there. They also have a stream for children with disabilities, and they raise the children's educational level in their own careful pace in this case, because these are children that may be, the example they gave was Down syndrome. Some of the children may be intellectually disabled to varying degrees. They go through the disability education, and when a student graduates, the way the website describes it, if they are capable and healthy, then they will be offered, they're being trained to be employable. And if they're employable outside, that's a wonderful thing. And if they're employable, I apologize for all this jumping around. If they're employable to a lesser degree, they will be employed in Sekem. And for the short period of time, a teacher will accompany a graduate, and then there will be another graduation ceremony when everybody gets a certificate for this graduating young adult who is integrated into the second workforce community. So such a strong, heart-driven approach to education. It's education is not an intellectual approach. It's very much, and we'll see this in the university in a moment, it's very much a head, heart, and hands approach to life in all of these locations. Any questions about the on-site second school? Just to prompt you, you go into the high school and you see skeletons. And the question that I failed is, what kind of animal is this? So any guesses?
Camel?
Camels?
It's a camel. Everybody else can do it. I couldn't do it. I looked at it and said, oh, horse. And then he said, look at the feet. Okay, well, then I realized it wasn't a horse. Yes, indeed, camels, camel skeletons. So there's lots of educational material. This is from the high school. I think this library was in the high school. I'm not sure. It might have been in the art room, actually. There was a visiting artist, a European artist who had been invited to come to Sekem for a period of time and was hosted there. And she was teaching art and producing art. And her paintings were all over the place, through all the buildings, in the guest house, all over the place. Lovely paintings that were really brightening up and adding art to every environment. So what a way to use a visiting artist. Okay, then at the top end, and fairly recently, Sekem has, and this would be Helmi Abelish initiative, has established a university. And when I visited, I was quite impressed. It's a new university with new buildings, with at the moment 5 faculties: business and economics, engineering, physical therapy, pharmacy, and organic agriculture are the 5 faculties, all staffed with teaching staff, professors. There's an administration building, and the administration is, and I guess also student support building. It's a brand new building, quite attractive. And then there is something I've separated from these 5 faculties, something called core program. And so the way Heliopolis University education is structured is that a student will enroll in a particular faculty, and the education will be focused on that domain. But all of the students are required to participate in the core program. And the core program is completely separate from all of these faculties. It's an art program, art focused. So there is visual arts, music, eurythmy, which is called movement, and a couple of other specialties in the core program. All students must take that. One of the advantages is that students from diverse faculties meet each other. And it's extremely common that this happens, that the students will meet in the core program and make friends with people that they would never otherwise meet in their faculty streams. In addition to these, there's also a history and philosophy component to the core program that all students must get a rounding of their education So it's a lovely, almost a Renaissance approach to education that you don't come out with just a really large knowledge about a really small area. You end up being a much more broadly educated person, hopefully with some friendships and connections that can serve you well as an adult. I'll show you some pictures of this. So this is the admin building, and the woman doing the tour for us. We were fortunate. She's in charge of marketing for Sekem, and she's a graduate of the business program. So she went through the Sekem business program and became the head of the marketing department. So we had her as our guide for the tour. Here's the founder's name again on a theater. This theater is lovely. It's a it's sort of an amphitheater inside, descending semicircular rows of seats and a big domed roof. The roof is rather simple. It's just fabric, but inside it's a lovely experience. And so the students and the faculty gather here for various reasons. They can have conferences here. They wouldn't typically have classes. They'll have things that are much more broad interest for the university. They have movie nights where everyone gets together to see. I think typically the examples I see are some Western movie that has some relevance to the university. So there are many opportunities to get together in a large group. So I will dive a little deeply, just a handful of slides, into one of the faculties, Faculty of Organic Agriculture. They all have their own buildings, their own research and teaching focuses. In the case of this faculty, we were taken into the aquaculture project. So they're working on aquaculture here. So all of these big barrels are full of water, and the water is full of fish. They bring these fish as very young fish, and they feed them and raise them in these barrels. But just like the cows, the main value of the fish is not that they can eventually sell a full-size fish to a restaurant, but that they can use it as a fertilizer for the aquaculture beds that are throughout this building. So they are using the fish to grow the plants. Typical aquaculture, except there are no chemicals input into this system, just fish and fish food. It looks extremely successful. There are many trays like this of different types. That was quite interesting to me. I'm actually a tropical fish hobbyist too, so I thought, what a concept. And there are gatherings of the faculty students. So when we went through, the pharmacy faculty had a display of a bunch of large cardboard stands with different aspects of pharmacy students' activity and interests. So that was sort of fun. They were sort of showing off their focus and their accomplishments to the other students. And I stopped and chatted with them. They all, or at least the ones that were forthcoming, were all good at English. So that was sort of nice for me. My Arabic is about 3 words. No. Let's see, is that the end of the, yep, that is the end of the university slides. So any questions about the university aspect and whether you can see any of the 3 folding there? I'll get into that in a moment.
Grant, I did have a quick question. Actually, I wasn't sure how many more slides, so if this is less important, take it later. But you mentioned briefly a tuition support for the Sekem school. Do you know anything about where that money is coming from for the tuition support?
at least part of it, according to the website, at least part of it is coming from the profit of Sekem. It's also coming from donors. So people can donate directly to institutions in Sekem and have their donations directed to that purpose. That's a common donation draw, is to say support tuition for various programs. I believe that also occurs in the Heliopolis University as well. So the donors can designate, or they can, with any not-for-profit, designated and general donations are welcomed. But Sekem has so many independent companies, and those companies are expected to function productively on their own with cooperation among the companies. That profit is a practical aspect. This is not a charitable undertaking. It's a profitable undertaking. And they give some of those profits back to things like the tuition support.
On that note, does the government of Egypt give them money for their schools too?
Yes, that's quite important that the government gives them political support, which wasn't quite your question, because anything that doesn't have political support is at risk. And Egypt is a very poor country. I saw that as I traveled after Sekem. I traveled through parts of Egypt, especially Cairo. It's a very poor country. So you can't depend on Egypt to maintain not-for-profit or NGO organizations. I suppose there could be a favorite one of a particularly powerful politician, but once he leaves, there's no guarantee. So Sekem has been built from the beginning in a way that I'd like to get into a bit, to be a profit-generating activity, but more than that, to be a socially responsible organization or group of organizations. So there may be some money coming from Sekem, from the government. I wouldn't be surprised if at the very beginning in 1977, this man who returned, this accomplished European man who was an Egyptian, returned from Austria and said, I want to do this. I wouldn't be surprised if some of that land was given. That's a political donation that could happen. But I don't believe that they depend on government funding to maintain their operation. So I'll go on to this last second slide. Is that true? Yep. And then a couple of slides just to polish off. But this I took from the website. So all the other slides were either my companion Monica or mine, but this one came straight from the Sekem website, which I certainly commend to you if you're curious about details. There are some details there. It might be answers to some of the questions that I can't handle. If we look at the structure of Sekem, I guess you could say the organizational structure. I was going to say corporate structure, but it's much more than that. So the organizational structure, we see that the column headings: economic life, ecology, societal life, and cultural life. I think we can fairly comfortably map threefolding here. Economic is easy, and cultural is easy. Societal, in my opinion, maps quite well to the judicial or governmental aspect of a healthy social life. When we see things like equality of genders and cooperative organization to support the employees. So there's a lot of a rights sphere to this column. Ecology is certainly an outlier in terms of the threefolding approach to society. But you can see that some of these can be moved, if we wanted to make this a threefolding diagram, can be moved one way or the other. Sekem Labs is certainly a cultural initiative, as would most scientific initiatives be, etc. Same with Mizan. So I won't belabor that, but just to take a quick look at what this indicates. So in the economic life, we have independent corporations functioning within the holding company of Sekem Holding. Sekem Holding is a financial department, it's described as, but I would say it's essentially a bank. And they have strong connection to Tridos and another European bank. So I think that they are buttressed in their financial in their well, this is something Mike could handle better than me for sure, but in their handling of cash flow and handling of money. If I knew enough about that, I could speak intelligently. I have still to read Mike's book, so that will help a lot. The ecology looks quite interesting to me as an old zoology student. So land reclamation, cattle management, grafting of plants, and Sekem Labs. I didn't get to see any of that except, of course, for the livestock management. But these are independent groups that are going outside of Sekem as well. So back to the economic life, we have groups that will buy from producers that are not Sekem. And so they're supporting the agricultural life of Egypt by buying from them the raw materials that are needed, and in some cases, selling back to places that may do further production work. I'm happy to be interrupted. So the societal life, we're very much looking at how socially responsible Sekem strives to be. And everywhere I poked a little deeper, I found it to be true that Sekem really is functioning on a fair trade situation with their outside suppliers. They're functioning on a fair wage relationship as much as they can with their employees. And of course, things like gender equality need to be promoted in every country, but countries like Egypt might have some special difficulties in their history. So that being promoted so strongly in Sekem is a good example. They have a term they call the economy of love. And the economy of love is not described very well on the website. And it's something that I think the circles will be talking about every day or week when they gather in the morning. There are also groups that gather for non-business reasons and try to further some of the philosophy that I would call anthroposophical. But the one aspect of the economy of love that was straightforward is the idea that fair trade is an aspect of economy, that fair trade above profit is even described as a guiding principle for Sekem. And then in the cultural column, we see the Development Foundation. I couldn't find much about that. I think that may be a fledgling activity in which they want to support outside developments that they find appropriate. So we'll see where the Sekem Development Foundation grows. Sekem itself has been acknowledged on a worldwide basis as a major, a successful initiative. And the Helmi has received international awards. I probably can't describe it very well, but clearly Sekem is acknowledged as a success story internationally. And so all of the schools are in the cultural life, the vocational training, And I didn't describe the medical center, but there's an independent building on Sekem in which visiting medical staff, they come in for there. I don't think there are any devoted, so they're a rotating staff. And so if you needed attention to, let's say, an ophthalmology problem, you would wait till the day that the ophthalmology staff were in rotation, etc. So it's not a full-fledged hospital, but it's a medical center in which quite a number of specialties are available. And again, they're available to the workers and the community around Sekem. So another aspect of serving the community. And then at the bottom, you'll see the university, which I described in some detail. One of the initiatives in this economy of love or fair trade or supporting the outside community is the concept of carbon offset credits. And so Helmi Abelish has been very active in establishing initiatives, operations, companies, farmers themselves that can qualify for the UN sustainable carbon offset credits. And so when I took a tour after, and I went off to see the rest of Egypt, my tour guide said, "Are you willing to contribute to carbon offset for your flights?" And I said, "Sure." So I now have a certificate that shows that my carbon offsets were were given to Sekem. But Helmi has brought many independent farms into this picture as well, so that those farms are qualified as recipients of carbon offset credits. And so the farmers not only make income from doing their farming work, but they make income from the richer world by carbon offset work. So a farmer is turning sand into a farm. He's certainly capturing carbon. There's nothing sleight of hand here. And Helmi has been able to establish that to such an extent that he's recognized by the Egyptian government as a significant player in the support for the small farming in Egypt. That's an amazing success story. I don't know if there are any questions. What I'm about to do is to say, I saw the rest of Egypt too. So I saw the pyramids and the camels, and I took my best picture ever. So I'm pretty pleased that I was on the Nile. So Egypt is an amazing place. Any questions now that I've run through all my pictures?
Grant, I do have one. You've just really touched on the surface of so many things. It's hard to grasp the entirety, but and you probably didn't have access to really focus on this question. But how does Sekem operate within the community around Cairo and throughout Egypt where it's operating? What attracts people to come and join with Sekem? Why do people do that?
Well, one of the aspects that would attract an employee is the security. Sekem is a reliable employer. They aren't devoted to the for-profit approach of saying we will have the minimum number of staff at any moment so we can maximize our profit. They look at the staff as a family of people around them, and that each of those is a human being that has potential and could move up in the ranks, but regardless of whether they're upwardly mobile, Sekem hires people and tries to improve their skills and improve their financial situation. Sekem probably pays a fair bit more than other organizations now that it's on solid economic footing. So you would come to Sekem to get a good job, a job that you could expect to keep, but then you would potentially be valued in a way that you're not familiar with and develop a devotion to the success of the organization. And then word of mouth would bring others. The fact that it continues to expand proves that this is successful. But Helmy told us something very interesting about, let's say, a what's the proper term in threefolding? A correct wage. That
Oh.
there is, yeah. Can you give me a better word for that?
True price, or fair,
Well,
how that one.
fair wage perhaps is a better way.
Or meeting the
Michael's,
need of the worker.
yeah, so the concept that I understand from threefolding is that ideally you would be paid what you need, and that's all. You wouldn't be paid a lot because you have a special title. So that everybody who's working would in threefolding would receive a similar wage because they all have the same needs. And if someone had different needs for a while, then they'd receive funding for that. That's not the case with Sekem, except at the top. Helmy tells us at the top, the people who have committed to anthroposophy and threefolding are willing to accept a fair wage, which means that people below that are expecting competitive wages at the very least. And those competitive wages, of course, as you get more senior, will rise. And so if you get a senior position, not the top, but a more senior position, you expect to be paid more, etc. You don't get paid because you have 5 children or 2 children or no children. You get paid for the work you do. And then when you get to the top, there's a bit of a sea change. If you wanted to be promoted to the inner circle, you would suddenly have an enormous decrease in your wages. So the threefolding isn't throughout the organization in terms of wages. It's a competitive employer that way, and perhaps a generous employer that way.
I thought it would also be good to mention, I've just read this or heard him say it on videos, that they're aiming to get lots of organic farmers going in Egypt. Like they have a sort of a 5-year plan and a 10-year plan. And I forget the numbers, but I think now they're maybe buying from 400 organic farms. And in 5 years, they're hoping to get 2,000 farms growing organically. That's very inspiring.
Ambitious. Unfortunately, they don't publish those goals on the website, so I can't confirm. I've heard those numbers. They never stick with me because future numbers are future numbers. But very clearly, that's a strong focus, is to support the country, not to just make Sekem more profitable. And so
Yeah.
they're very much focused on bringing farm standards up in independent farms so that their produce is acceptable. And they have education programs and support for those farmers to reach that level, that their produce is acceptable to the processing of ISIS and can be brought into the mix. And they have those farmers then have a reliable and a fair trading supplier, customer. Yeah. Go ahead.
Answer Jim's question, I saw a video of some farmers talking about how well they felt they were supported by Sekem. That they would have consultants come and help them with their agriculture. So it
Yes, I
speaks.
believe it's quite real that's an important focus for them. And it's rather unusual.
Yes, I think they have workshops for them also. And it's also a community. That's another thing I remember them saying, that they really appreciated being part, as you had said also, being part of the community. Like a farmer can be kind of isolated, but if they are included in these workshops, then it adds a whole different dimension for their life.
Yes,
Mike, I
that
think you had a
agrees.
question.
Mhm.
Yeah, maybe related to the community question. You didn't mention, or I didn't hear, um, how many people reside on the property? Do they have like standalone houses or apartments, or how is it that people live, or do they commute from outside? I'm curious.
Both, definitely. I saw some of the housing. I don't have a number, so I can't answer you directly, but I might venture a guess that 50% are commuters from the nearby area and 50% are on-site residents.
And do you know if they're homeowners or renters or?
No, it seems to me to be a communal situation, so I guess they would be renters. There are a couple of buildings, one that Helmy lives in, and that's an independent home. But I don't think there are many of those. I think the residences are just designed to be particularly affordable residences. People would go elsewhere to have their meals, and there'd be communal laundry and that kind of thing.
Okay.
They'd go elsewhere on the farm. It's not as if they'd have to go off the farm. All of those facilities are on the farm. Yeah.
My sense was that it was about 2,000 people, but maybe it's grown since last summer, or since I last heard. 2,000 employees, I should say.
Excuse me, Linda. Grant, you were only there for a few days, and as you say, it was during a kind of a quiet time for many of the institutions. But did you get any general sense of they certainly have an internal focus, working with people within the community. What kind of organizational outreach do they conduct? Are they actively out in the community all the time, and are they doing workshops, or how do they interact with the community around them proactively?
I'm not sure. I didn't see any of that while I was there, but they have a large theater on Sekem, a large amphitheater, I should say. It's an open amphitheater with a roof just floating over top. They have a large amphitheater on the university, so they certainly can have activities of that type on the university and on the Sekem farm. Now, when they go off to support a farmer, that would be on site at the farm. So that would be extensively distributed. There are many farms, as we believe we know. Do they go out and sort of evangelize the work in the community? I'm not aware of that.
Well, maybe a fairer question is, are they out trying to actively engage farmers to join their network or sell their products through distribution systems? What are they doing?
Yes, I believe especially Helmy, and I'm sure a small group of people supporting that are very active in trying to build the outside connections. And so they go to the farms, they go to the places where the farm congregations would be, and try to recruit people into their system that requires organic produce. So they can't just go to a farm and say, "We'll buy your produce." It's a process of bringing a farm up to the standard, but they're constantly doing that. And whatever number I might have heard would be wrong by now potentially. So I don't remember numbers, but I certainly get the impression that they're growing. I don't see the medical center or the foundation growing at the moment, but I saw everything else looking very healthy, looking like they're growing actively.
Yeah, and I seem to recall reading or hearing that they engaged with the government at some point, convincing them that it would be more economically sustainable for the farmers to go organic in terms of cotton production, because I think they could show the Egyptian government that there was a market for it and it would maybe be less costly. I don't remember the details of it, but it seems to me that they were talking to the government, and the government, I think, agreed.
It seems quite appropriate that they would be doing that, not to, as we said before, not to acquire funds from the government, but to acquire political and marketing support. so the government can promote Sekem as a viable option. And the local governments in particular, those would be the kind of things that local governments would support people directly rather than the top level where they're establishing principles but not reaching the individuals. So I think, but I'm not knowledgeable about that. I'm not sure how much they do or how effective they are. However, their growth seems to suggest that they're effective.
Yeah, and also you mentioned he's asked to speak at various important events. I think he's spoken at the UN or for a conference of farmers organized by the UN, and also in Saudi Arabia, I think 2023, he was one of the main speakers. So he gets exposure.
Yeah, I think part of the farmer outreach has to do with helping the farmers increase their wage because of the carbon credits. So I know one of his big focuses has been on developing their standards, that is, the other farmers in the area, to get to the point where they would be recognized as creating carbon offsets so that they can literally have a higher total income in their life, not just from the produce they sell, but from the income they get from the carbon credits.
That's exactly right from my experience. I heard Helmy say literally that, Christopher. So, yeah, you're right on spot.
Yeah, I seem to recall that they had a 40 in 2017. They had a 40-year prediction. You know, they'd already completed 40 years, and they wanted to look ahead 40 years. And it was roughly around the time that Abraham had died, to try to look ahead. And they really didn't want to grow themselves so much, but they did want to have big plans, big ideas. And one of them was, well, why not think that maybe all the farmers, was it 7 million farmers? A huge number of farmers, small farmers, cotton farmers in Egypt. Why not envision that maybe all of them could become biodynamic cotton farmers? So, yeah, I think what Elizabeth and Grant, you were just saying, is that Helmy figured out a way to convince the government that it really is less expensive for everyone, not conventionally speaking, but when you look at all the future costs of pesticides and fertilizers, that it really is less expensive to go biodynamic. And with that support, then my understanding is he has been reaching out in a major way and meeting the goals that they set for themselves so far.
And water retention, he talks about too, how biodynamics is really great with water retention.
That's very interesting about the farm in the desert concept. The Sekem, when it was founded, was a bit of an outlier. It was a long way from the city and it was a fair distance from the Nile, but it wasn't really without water. They could drill a well and they could get some water, and the quality was functional. So the danger is that if farms keep expanding, that water could be depleted. And so water retention in a functioning soil is really valuable long term as well. I find that particularly appealing. So these arguments, sometimes they work at the high level and you say, okay, you've given me the economic picture for the next 70 years for this area. But as Christopher was highlighting, the fact that the farmer gets carbon offset income is very present. And so that's an enormous aspect of winning over the farmers to sustainable agriculture.
All right, well, we've run over a little bit. I'm okay with going on further if Grant wants to, or if other people have other questions. But if not, so let me just open it up for final questions or final statements.
I guess I would add to Linda's point about the 40 years forward. I think it was when they made that commitment to the next 40 years, that's when I think they really introduced this concept of the economy of love.
All right. Well, Grant,
Oh, that does remind me, as Christopher says, that Helmy is a very engaging man and he's certainly can be persuasive. The thing that really caught my attention was how he described how he plans. So these impressive 40-year plans are placed out there, but Helmy says, every morning when I wake up, my job is to change something. He actually says that his job is to change something for the better. So he's not going to be held by anything. He can do it better. He will change it. An interesting approach to life. That's his job as the CEO, to change things for the better every morning.
Wow.
all right. Well, I'd like to congratulate you, Grant, for pulling together, I think, a very well organized and absorbable presentation. And I learned a lot, and it's given me a little more, I don't know, present picture of Sekem today and how they operate. And even though you, you weren't able to talk to a lot of people actively there, but thanks for your time. Thanks for the, I know it's a lot of work to put all this together. Great job. And we hope to hear more from you, but also from people at Sekem possibly, or looking into the future. Maybe we can do some more. But I'm going to stop the recording right now. If people want to just hold on a little bit and discuss
I just
more,
want to
feel
say my
free.
thanks as well. Grant, it was fabulous. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
That's
Okay. So I'm going to stop the recording.